Imagine uncovering the ultimate betrayal, your wife and best friend hiding a secret that shatters your world. What happened next changed my life in ways I never saw coming. Architecture has always been my passion. From doodling blueprints in school notebooks to earning my degree, I dreamed of creating spaces that would inspire people. Along the way, I met Linda, a woman who not only supported my vision but shared it. Together, we built a thriving architectural firm. My closest friend, Mike, joined us early on, and his project management expertise became the backbone of our operation. Everything seemed perfect, until it wasn't. One ordinary afternoon, while fine-tuning a project at my desk, the office TV caught my attention. A news segment covering a liquidation sale in a small town called Ocala briefly aired footage of a motel. To my utter disbelief, I saw Linda and Mike leaving a room together. Linda had left work early that day, saying she had errands to run. Mike, on the other hand, claimed he was out in Gainesville on business. My world began to crumble right there. 14 years of marriage and a friendship spanning decades, both now shrouded in doubt. Our firm had come a long way, especially after winning an award for a city hall design. That recognition catapulted us to new heights, allowing us to expand our team to 12 architects, lease a 7-story office building, and enjoy a steady stream of income from renting out additional spaces. I had invested the most in the company, with Linda and Mike contributing significantly as well. It felt like we were unstoppable, until that haunting news clip. Linda and I had grown distant over the years. My relentless work hours often left little time for us, but I never once doubted her love or loyalty. Yet, seeing that footage filled me with a mix of confusion, anger, and heartbreak. Hoping it was all a misunderstanding, I reached out to an old college buddy, Greg, who now worked at the TV station. I asked for a copy of the broadcast and spent the night rewatching the footage. There was no mistaking it, Linda and Mike were caught on camera, embracing as they left the motel. Desperate for answers, I contacted Tom Noble, the motel owner, and asked about the surveillance footage. He told me the police had taken the tapes due to an unrelated incident but assured me I could review them anytime. Without wasting a moment, I made arrangements to visit the motel. That evening, I told my secretary I was leaving early, asked her to inform security, and shut down my computer, dreading what I might discover. Watching the surveillance tapes was like peeling off a bandage slowly, knowing it would hurt but unable to stop. The footage confirmed my worst fears. Mike arrived first, obtained the key to room 116, and entered. A few minutes later, Linda followed, walking in without hesitation. After some time, the recording showed a man sprinting past their room with a weapon, chased by police. Once the commotion subsided, the two emerged, sharing an intimate kiss before leaving together. Seeking more details, I questioned the motel clerk, hoping for anything that might cast doubt on what I had seen. His casual response crushed me further. "Oh yeah, they're regulars," he said nonchalantly. "Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, they've been coming here for 2 years." Hearing those words was like a knife twisting in my chest. How could two people I trusted so deeply betray me for so long? At that moment, I knew my life as I knew it was over. Clutching a copy of the surveillance footage, I headed home with my mind racing. I knew I couldn't let Linda and Mike realize I was onto them, not yet. I needed time to think and a solid plan to uncover the full extent of their betrayal. Was this just an affair, or had they also been siphoning funds from the business? The questions swirled in my head, and I resolved to take action discreetly. My first step was to initiate a forensic audit of the company's finances. Luckily, an opportunity to buy time was already on the horizon. We were scheduled to attend a Southeastern Architects Association conference in a week. I decided to use the event as a cover to dig deeper into the situation. Meanwhile, with my secretary, Marge, preparing to go on maternity leave, I thought of Debbie, her temporary replacement. Debbie had already proven herself intelligent, resourceful, and proactive. She'd even suggested setting up a childcare room in the office, an idea both Linda and Mike had enthusiastically supported. I realized I needed to involve Debbie in my plan. Despite everything, part of me still struggled to accept that Linda and Mike could betray me like this. Linda had always been affectionate, telling me she loved me multiple times a day. Mike, too, seemed to adore his wife, Mary. Could it all have been a facade? I knew I had to act convincingly at dinner tonight to avoid arousing suspicion. Dinner turned out to be a balancing act of emotions. Mary, Mike's wife, casually mentioned the recent news report about the liquidation at the Nobility Motel. I saw Linda visibly flinch, though Mike stayed composed and even asked if it was the same motel we'd once worked on during a project. Mary's tone made me wonder if she knew about the affair and was subtly testing them. I kept my expression neutral, though unease churned inside me. After dinner, we began tidying up. Linda washed the dishes while Mike dried them. Mary and I brought in items from the patio. As we returned, we found Linda and Mike chatting quietly. Mary joked, "What are you two planning? Sneaking off once JN and I are asleep?" The two of them jumped at her words. Linda laughed nervously, quipping that sneaking around was the only way they could have fun these days. She added that Mike was too scared of being caught by Mary. We all laughed, but I couldn't shake the discomfort. Mary's joke had hit too close to home. Once Mary and Mike left, I couldn't hold back any longer. I turned to Linda and asked if there was something going on. She looked at me with the same warm affection as always, denying everything. She told me she loved me and was even ready to start trying for a baby. Her sincerity was disarming, leaving me torn between my instincts and the Linda I thought I knew. Later, as I headed upstairs, Linda was already waiting for me, acting like nothing had changed. But my guilt and confusion were too much. Nausea overtook me, and I rushed to the bathroom. Linda came after me, concerned, trying to comfort me. I couldn't even meet her gaze. I mumbled an excuse, quickly dressed, grabbed my keys, and left the house. I drove aimlessly, my mind a storm of emotions, before eventually stopping at a small cafe. I needed time to think. Sitting in a quiet corner, I ordered a coffee and tried to calm the chaos in my head. My phone rang, it was Linda. I stared at the screen, unable to answer, and let it go to voicemail. Taking a deep breath, I sipped my coffee, wondering how I had missed the cracks forming in my life. Sitting in the cafe, I couldn't help but wonder how I had missed the signs that my marriage was unraveling. Was I so absorbed in my work that I had blinded myself to the cracks forming in my relationship with Linda? As I wrestled with my thoughts, I noticed Debbie, my new assistant, walking in. She spotted me, hesitated briefly, then approached with a warm smile. "You look like you've had a rough day," she said gently. "Want to talk about it? I've been through my share of tough times, and I'm a pretty good listener." At first, I was reluctant to open up, but something about Debbie's demeanor put me at ease. Eventually, I told her everything, how I had discovered Linda's affair with Mike, how it felt like my world was crumbling, and how I struggled to reconcile her daily declarations of love with her betrayal. Debbie held my hand as I spoke, her expression soft yet focused. When I finished, she sighed and said, "It sounds like she's caught in something she doesn't fully understand herself. My sister was like that. She loved her husband, but she had this compulsion, almost, to seek attention elsewhere. Her marriage didn't survive it. Eventually, it cost her everything, her health, her family." Her words struck a nerve. "Do you think Linda loves Mike?" I asked, my voice cracking. "How long do you think this has been going on? And why hasn't it stopped?" Debbie squeezed my hand reassuringly. "The answers are important, but they'll only come if you dig for them. You deserve the truth, even if it's painful." I nodded, already piecing together a plan. "Linda and Mike will be at a conference with me in Atlanta for a few days. While we're away, I need someone to investigate here. I was thinking of hiring a forensic accountant to look into the company's finances. And if you're willing, I'd like you to help by keeping an eye on their usual meeting spots. Debbie's eyes sparkled with determination. Hidden cameras could work. Do you have specifics on when and where they usually meet? I handed her the details and offered her the company credit card to cover expenses. She smiled knowingly. I might need a little cash for a babysitter too. You can use the card for that, I replied. Withdraw up to $300 if needed. The credit limit is $10,000, I'll give you the PIN. Debbie laughed lightly. Generous boss, aren't you? Her smile faded into sincerity as she added, Don't worry, John. I won't let you down. I take care of my friends. Thank you, I said earnestly. I won't forget this. The following morning, Debbie arrived at the office with her usual energy, her heels clicking briskly down the hallway. She paused at my door and greeted me with a bright smile. Good morning, boss. Good morning, I replied. You didn't go out for lunch yesterday? No, I was swamped, she said. I'm getting payroll ready early since we'll be in Atlanta on Friday. Is everything set with Mike and Mary? I nodded. Yeah, all squared away. Are you feeling better today? You seemed off last night. I hesitated briefly before responding. I'm good now. By the way, Debbie dropped off some daycare options yesterday. She's sharp. Linda raised an eyebrow, smirking playfully. She sure is. Should I be worried about her around you? Her joke stung in a way I couldn't express, but I forced a chuckle. You don't have anything to worry about. As Linda turned back to her work, I realized how much effort it took to keep my emotions in check. Every glance, every word from her felt like a test of my resolve. But with Debbie's help, I felt a glimmer of hope that I might finally get the answers I needed. I chuckled lightly at Linda's teasing. Why worry now? You've never had a reason before, I said, forcing a casual tone. Besides, Debbie's way too young for me. Though if I were 20 years younger, I trailed off with a grin, trying to deflect the tension. The next day, as we drove to Florida for the conference, I kept my guard up. Linda, Mike, and I were in the car together, with Mike driving while Linda sat in the back. I feigned sleep, pulling my cap low over my eyes, but I stayed alert. After a while, I saw Linda subtly signal to Mike, who glanced back to check on me. I shut my eyes briefly and, when I reopened them, Mike had moved closer to her. My heart sank as I faintly heard Linda's soft murmurs. Sitting up abruptly, I broke the silence. Where are we now? I asked, feigning innocence. They both jumped. Linda answered quickly, we just entered Florida. We're looking for a pit stop so Mike can take over driving. At that moment, I felt a wave of cold finality. My marriage was over. The rest of the drive passed in near silence, save for a quick stop for fast food. When we finally returned home and unloaded the car, I wasted no time. I needed to confirm everything. In the privacy of my office, I inserted the surveillance DVD into my computer. What I saw left no room for doubt. The footage began with Linda entering the motel room and immediately kissing Mike. They undressed, and the scene unfolded into undeniable evidence of their affair. I fast-forwarded, unable to stomach the details, stopping only at a clip from Thursday. In the video, Linda told Mike, "This has to end. I think we've been too careless. They both suspect something, we can't do this again." Mike agreed, adding wistfully, "It's been an incredible 5 years, though." He laughed bitterly and joked about one last time, but Linda refused, saying firmly, "I can't lose John." They shared a final kiss before leaving the room. The next day, I called everyone to the conference room, Linda, Mike, Mary, and Debbie. My pulse raced as I prepared to play the footage. When they arrived, I turned to Mary and said, "I thought you should be here, since this affects you too." Linda and Mike exchanged panicked glances, but neither said a word. I introduced Debbie as my assistant and started the video. As the motel footage played, Linda let out a horrified scream and collapsed onto the floor. Mike turned to me, his face red with anger. "You conniving," he started, but Mary interrupted sharply. "No, Mike, you're the only one to blame here. Be quiet. I want to hear this." Her tone was icy and resolute. After the footage ended, I turned to Mary and calmly said, "I think you need to decide how to handle your side of this. As for me, I've made my choice." I laid out the terms. Mike was fired, and I offered to buy out his stake in the company. Mary surprised me by speaking up. "Actually, I'd like to stay on as a silent partner. Mike's fired, and he's lost his home. I'll take care of the paperwork." I nodded, relieved. That simplifies things. Let's get it done. Linda, tears streaming down her face, whispered, "John, can I keep my share as a silent partner too? Just send me the dividends." "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I was weak, and I threw away the best man in the world. My life is over." I sighed heavily. "You can keep the house. I'll move out soon." With that, the meeting ended. Linda left the room, her heels echoing down the hallway. Moments later, I heard the unmistakable sound of her being served divorce papers. After the dust settled, I turned to Debbie in my office. "I'm putting a lot on your plate. Can you handle it?" She smiled confidently. "Yes, I can. I'll only ask for help if I really need it." "Great," I said. "From now on, set up a daily morning meeting with me. You're officially my personal assistant. Find a secretary for yourself, and give yourself a raise." Her face lit up, and before I realized it, she had hugged me and kissed me softly on the lips. She pulled back quickly, blushing. "I'm so sorry. I got carried away." I laughed, amused by her reaction. "Thank you for the kiss. I might have to promote you daily." She blushed deeper but smiled brightly. "I'll try to earn it every day." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe life after Linda wouldn't be so bad after all. As Dolly played nearby, I couldn't help but ask her, "Dolly, have you ever been to the zoo?" She paused, looking up at Debbie and then back at me, her small brow furrowed in curiosity. "No, where the animals are," she asked, her voice full of innocence. I smiled at Debbie, then turned back to Dolly. "That's right. I'd love to take you and your mommy to the zoo this Sunday, if you'd like." Dolly's eyes lit up like fireworks. "Mommy, can we go?" she asked, tugging eagerly at Debbie's hand. Realizing I might have overstepped, I quickly added, "I'm sorry, Deb. I should have asked you first before offering." Debbie waved it off with a warm smile. "It's okay. Dolly's been wanting to see animals for ages. Sunday sounds perfect." Dolly squealed with delight, spinning in circles as she planned which animals she wanted to see first. Her joy was infectious, and I couldn't stop smiling. Later that day, as Debbie prepared to leave, I noticed her pause at the door, her shoulders tense. "What's wrong?" I asked gently. She hesitated, glancing back at me. "Oh, it's nothing." Before I could say more, Dolly chimed in, her voice full of concern. "Mommy, what's wrong?" I smiled at them both. "Well, there is one problem. Dolly didn't give me a goodbye kiss." Dolly giggled, running toward me with her arms outstretched. I scooped her up, laughing as she planted a sweet kiss on my cheek. After setting her down, I turned to Debbie and handed her a set of keys. She looked at them, puzzled. "What are these for?" "Well," I said, "you look so professional in that new suit of yours. You can't exactly be seen riding the bus. These are the keys to your company car, it's parked in your new reserved spot downstairs." Debbie's eyes widened in shock. Wait, really? You're serious? Absolutely, I replied. If you don't like it, I can find you something else, but I thought it would make things easier for you and Dolly. Her brow furrowed. We love it, but it feels like too much. I can't accept this. It's been sitting and used for a year, I explained. If you don't take it, it'll just collect dust. Unless, you really don't want it. She laughed, shaking her head. Okay. I'll keep it. But you sure know how to get your way. I chuckled. Hey, you're the one who convinced me to set up a daycare here at the office. You're good at getting things done. Just don't hold it against me if I return the favor. She softened, her voice quieter. I could never be mad at you. You've done so much for me and Dolly. I don't even know how to repay you. You don't owe me anything, I said earnestly. If anything, I've gained far more from you than I've given. Her expression shifted to confusion. How could that be? I haven't given you anything. You've given me the most precious gift of all, time with you and Dolly, I said. Your kindness has pulled me out of a very dark place. If I weren't so much older, I'd court you with everything I've got. Realizing the weight of what I had just said, I paused, suddenly unsure. I probably shouldn't have said that. Debbie's cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. Instead, she smiled. When I was little, I dreamed of marrying a tall, strong, handsome man who would dance with me into the sunset. I grinned, trying to lighten the moment. Well, 3 out of 4 isn't bad. She laughed softly. Honestly, I'd skip the dancing, for your love. Her words hung in the air between us, carrying a tenderness that both warmed and overwhelmed me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. I can't live without that, I murmured, the thought of building a life with Debbie and Dolly consuming my mind. My thoughts raced through the details we'd need to arrange, our marriage license, the honeymoon, and where we'd live. Debbie must have noticed my distracted expression because she grinned knowingly. You're already thinking about a solution, aren't you? She asked gently. I nodded, sharing some of my ideas with her. Debbie listened patiently, then smiled. Don't worry, I've got it all planned. Trust me. Now, go back to sleep. I tried to relax, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. By the time morning came, though, I couldn't have been happier. Debbie had a way of making everything feel right. She had even started training a young man named Jeff to handle her daily administrative tasks, ensuring everything at work would continue smoothly. Jeff was athletic and around 30, which gave me a pang of unease, but I kept my concerns to myself. Debbie's trustworthiness and devotion to me never wavered. Still, the next morning, I noticed her spending more time with Jeff. It gnawed at me, so I decided to visit Joanne in the secretarial pool. Joanne, I began, keeping my tone casual, I'm looking for a new assistant to help out. Joanne smiled knowingly. Don't worry. I've got just the right person. She'll be in your office tomorrow, ready to go. That afternoon, I focused on work, reviewing some new wall section drawings, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Debbie. Later that evening, she and Dolly brought me back to the present. After a productive day, Debbie kissed me awake from a brief nap, whispering, "We're done for now and we'll head back tomorrow." Guess how much we got for under $2,500? Back home, we unloaded box after box into Debbie's dressing room. I helped her unpack, and we ordered Chinese food for dinner. Dolly was thrilled with the fortune cookies, handing me one eagerly. I cracked it open and read aloud, "Your daddy will take you shopping for dresses tomorrow." Dolly's eyes lit up with excitement. "Is that for me?" she asked, nearly bouncing in place. "It sure is," I replied, smiling. The next day was a whirlwind of shopping as Debbie and Dolly got new clothes. That evening, as we settled in, Dolly climbed into bed and said, "I love Mommy," and I love Daddy too. Debbie smiled warmly and added, yes, sweetie. Daddy most of all, we love him the most. Hearing their words filled my heart to the brim. I entered the room and hugged both of them tightly. Dolly reached up, and I scooped her into my arms. I love you, Daddy, she whispered. I love you too, sweetie. Sleep well, I replied, tears brimming in my eyes as I held her. Her small voice continued, soft but full of emotion. I love Mommy and Daddy as much as I can. In that moment, I felt like the luckiest man in the world. The love I had for these two, my girls, was overwhelming. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, Debbie chatted with her mom on the phone. After hanging up, she turned to me, beaming. We're all set for Sunday, she said. Later that day, during a visit with Debbie's Uncle William, the conversation took an unexpected turn. He recognized me from a business meeting years ago, and we ended up reminiscing about work. At one point, he confided in me, regret clouding his voice. You know, I pushed Debbie to have an abortion once. It's my biggest mistake. I've never forgiven myself for it. I laughed gently, trying to ease his guilt. Uncle William, Debbie is one of the most determined and intelligent women I've ever met. She's turned my business around in just a few months. Production is up, profits are soaring, and everyone loves working with her. His eyes softened as he nodded, as if my words provided him a measure of peace. As the afternoon went on, Granny asked if Dolly could stay with her for a few days. Debbie hesitated but eventually agreed. It was clear that even as our little family thrived, there were still shadows in the past, and some intentions toward Debbie that stirred my protective instincts. But one thing was certain, with her by my side, there was nothing we couldn't face together. That morning, I called Debbie into my office. I need you to fire Jeff, I said plainly. She blinked in surprise but didn't argue. Debbie had a way of trusting my judgment even when it caught her off guard. A few hours later, she returned to confirm the task was done. Jeff's gone, she said as we left the office together. On the drive home, Debbie broke the silence. Aren't you going to ask me why I fired him? I smiled knowingly. Why wouldn't you follow through? She glanced at me before replying. One of the workers tipped me off that Jeff had been spreading rumors about us. That's why I didn't hesitate. Good call, I said. We should consider promoting whoever had the courage to speak up. That night, as we prepared dinner, Debbie reflected aloud. I don't even remember seeing Jeff before he worked for us. I hesitated before suggesting, maybe your mind blocked the memory to avoid reliving any trauma. It happens sometimes. Debbie nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. But her attention shifted when she noticed my swollen hand. We need to get some ice on that, she said, quickly fetching a bowl. Thanks, I said, wincing as she applied the ice. You handled Jeff so well, she complimented me. I chuckled. Ballet slippers would have been a better choice than stilettos. Otherwise, you might have done some real damage. Debbie smirked but her tone turned serious. You're always protecting me, no matter what. A few days later, we decided to take our safety more seriously. We left work early, dropped Dolly off at her grandma's house, and went to a martial arts center. We explained our concerns about having a toddler and wanting to be prepared for anything. The owner recommended a self-defense baton disguised as a flashlight. With a quick wrist flick, it extended to 21 inches. We signed up for a 1-hour class and bought 2 batons before heading to a nearby weapons shop for concealed carry training. Debbie took to the training immediately, showing a natural aptitude for handling weapons. She practiced with a Walther PPK and quickly became proficient. I joked, if you're in an evening gown with a tiny clutch, you might still need me for protection. She grinned, her eyes sparkling. I'll always look to you for protection. You're my hero. The weapons shop owner watched Debbie's progress and commented on her impressive skills. We both passed our written tests and earned our concealed carry permits. Debbie's enthusiasm didn't wane. She began stopping by the range regularly to practice, becoming extremely accurate at close range. One evening, Debbie excitedly shared her plans for a surprise trip. "We're going to Grand Cayman," she said, her eyes gleaming. "And we're staying at a clothing-optional resort." I laughed. "Should I ask how much this is costing?" She waved her hand dismissively. "It's not much, and I've already packed most of our things." The vacation was incredible, though our venture into the clothing-optional section didn't go quite as planned. After a relaxing day on the beach, we woke up to a small crowd gathered nearby, their curiosity directed at us. A man approached Debbie, offering her a role in an adult film, claiming it would make her big money. We left the beach quickly, and though we laughed about the absurdity of the situation, I could tell it lingered with her. Back in our room, I was still brooding. As I undressed, Debbie noticed my mood. "Is it me?" she asked gently. "Was it something I said or did?" I sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "It's not you, Deb. It's just, your teasing earlier hit me harder than I expected. I didn't mean to let it show." Her face crumpled, tears spilling as she tried to explain. "I never wanted to hurt you, never." Her words came in choked sobs as she clung to my arm. I pulled her close, speaking softly. "It's okay. I know you didn't mean it. Just seeing you upset hurts more than anything else ever could." She leaned into me, and as we sat there together, I realized that no misunderstanding, no hurt feelings could outweigh the love we had built. In that moment, I vowed to protect that bond, no matter what. I overheard Debbie's conversation with the man selling roasted corn at the beach, and though her eyes were still wet from our earlier misunderstanding, she turned to me with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I smiled, blending humor with my lingering vulnerability. "I'll do my best with my inferior equipment," I joked, earning a chuckle from her. Life moved on, and a few months after our honeymoon, Debbie called Dolly and me to the kitchen table. She held our hands, her smile radiating warmth. "I have news from the doctor," she said, her tone calm but excited. My mind immediately feared the worst, but Debbie reassured me with a laugh. "Don't worry, it's good news. We're going to have a new family member soon." Dolly's eyes lit up, and she squealed, "Are we getting a puppy?" Debbie laughed and shook her head. "No, sweetie. You're going to have a little brother or sister." Overjoyed, I scooped Dolly into my arms, spinning her around the kitchen as we cheered together. But later, as the excitement settled, my thoughts turned to worries. Debbie's biological father had been a large man. What if the baby was too big? What if she had twins? These possibilities hadn't crossed my mind before, and I felt a knot of anxiety forming. Debbie noticed my troubled expression. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked gently, pulling me close. I whispered my fears, my voice barely audible. "What if it's too much for you? What if it's dangerous?" She smiled, her tone steady and comforting. "Women's bodies are made to handle this, and modern medicine is amazing. That's why I go for prenatal care. The doctor monitors everything, and if there's a problem, they can induce labor or perform a C-section." Her calmness was like a balm to my nerves. Months later, during a routine trip to the bank, our lives took an unexpected turn. Shots rang out as we approached the entrance. My heart pounded as I rushed to Debbie, relieved to find her unharmed. Before we could process what was happening, more gunfire erupted from inside. Instinctively, I moved toward the shattered glass doors, but Debbie grabbed my arm. "I'm coming with you," she said firmly. Inside, a man held a woman hostage. I took aim and fired, striking him in the head and disarming him. As I moved to help the woman, another robber appeared from behind a desk. Without hesitation, Debbie fired 2 quick shots, neutralizing the threat. The aftermath brought a flood of media attention. Debbie was inundated with offers for interviews, talk shows, and endorsements for everything from hair products to diapers. As her due date approached, I stepped in to protect her from being overwhelmed, limiting her activities and restricting plans for the weeks surrounding the baby's birth. Despite my efforts, Debbie insisted on working right up until labor. Her determination never ceased to amaze me. Months later, we hosted a watch party at my property near Daytona. It was an adults-only event, so Dolly and Johnny stayed with Grandma. The party was a success, but I noticed Jamal, one of our team members, hovering around Debbie more than usual. It began to bother me, especially as it seemed like Debbie was avoiding me. Betty, who was helping with the food, caught on to my mood. "What's wrong?" she asked. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I need a walk to clear my head," I muttered, stepping out onto the beach. As I walked, doubts consumed me. Could Debbie be interested in Jamal? The thought was unbearable. I wrestled with the idea until Debbie found me later that night. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I hesitated before admitting, "I saw the way Jamal was around you. I thought, maybe there was something between you two. I feel like a fool now." Debbie took my hand, squeezing it gently. "Don't. It's normal to feel that way. But now you know the truth, there's nothing to worry about. So, what do we do now?" I nodded, appreciating her understanding. "We'll have Jamal report to Marty or Betty moving forward. It'll keep everything professional and clear." Debbie smiled. "That sounds like the right plan. And for what it's worth, you'll never have to worry about me spending too much time with anyone else. You're my everything." Her words reassured me, and as we walked back toward the house hand in hand, I felt a renewed sense of trust and partnership between us. Debbie had a way of turning even the most difficult moments into opportunities to grow stronger together.